There is not a gaming company out there I despise more than Activision. And in this video, I'm going to show you why this awful corporation is spearheaded by a bunch of money-hungry, greedy, negligent bastards that only strive for profit. They are the kings of microtransactions and not finishing their products. They produce a plethora of shovelware, movie, show and tie-in games. They have ruined almost every single franchise they've put their grimy mitts on, turning it into a machine for cash and cash only. Like a pimp selling their prostitutes to customers and not giving a damn about them. Of course, I know they are a for-profit corporation, and as such, the primary objective of such a company is to turn a profit, but the extent to which Activision takes its greed is plainly anti-consumer and frankly not good business. And I do acknowledge that Activision has done its share of good, but the negatives most certainly outweigh the positives. Where can I possibly begin with discussing this filthy company? Well, why don't we begin with perhaps their most egregious acts, their treatment of Spyro the Dragon and Crash Bandicoot. So, as you might remember from my year-old video on the fate of Spyro, Activision currently owns the rights to the IP. For those unaware, Spyro was one of the big-name 3D platforming mascots of the early 21st century. He was created by Insomniac Games and published by Universal Interactive, who kept the rights to the IP when Insomniac left the series to start working on what would become Ratchet & Clank. After a stream of decent to awful Spyro titles, Universal sold Spyro to Vivin Denny, which was eventually acquired by Activision. To sum it up, Activision now owns the rights to Spyro, and all they seem to want to do with him is use him as a marketing ploy to sell toys. It's sad when you really think about it. I grew up loving and knowing Spyro even during his darker times, but kids who are growing up with Skylanders will only recognize him as that one purple dragon toy that doesn't even come pre-packaged with the game anymore. Skylanders is a series of games I hate with an undying passion, solely for the reason of taking the Spyro name and not letting go of it. He's not even used as a character in the plot of any recent Skylanders games, so why even keep him as this worthless toy, Activision? On the game he's featured in, he's not even in the forefront of the box art. Some other random orc-like creature is. Furthering that, why the heck do they still make Skylanders games? I understand these figures are giving you banknotes to roll around in, but these annual releases are a bit much. I mean, can you name 3 Skylanders characters right now besides Spyro, everybody? Here, let me give it a go. Mongo from Shrek 2, Prince Zora from Ocarina of Time, and Crash Bandicoot. I'm not even sure the developers at Activision could if they tried. Point is, these Skylanders games are blatant cash grabs with no soul whatsoever, and for some reason people keep buying them. Are they really that cool to collect? I personally do not see the appeal. All I can see is the rotting carcass of a company who stopped caring about quality and integrity. Then there's the other mascot in question, Crash Bandicoot. Okay, I know I haven't gotten around to reviewing the Crash games yet, but I assure you I will someday, and I'll make a whole video about his fate worse than death. To sum it up for you all, Crash was debatably the biggest Sony mascot for the PS1 era. After Naughty Dog's contract with the IP ended and they moved on to Jak and Daxter, Activision acquired the rights from Universal Interactive and made a few arguably mediocre Crash games. The original Crash game sold really well and kickstarted Naughty Dog as a second-party developer for Sony. However, these new Crash games, specifically Mind Over Mutant, didn't sell well enough to justify producing another Crash Bandicoot game. Most people either attribute this to people not liking the new design or feel of Crash, while others would blame it on Activision's incompetence and not marketing this game at all. I remember when Mind Over Mutant Mutants came out, and I felt like I was the only one who knew about it or cared. Regardless, there hasn't been a Crash installment since, and that was over 8 years ago. In 2011, on a Kotaku interview, Activision CEO Eric Hirschberg was quoted saying, "I don't have anything official to announce, but I can speak as an individual. I love Crash Bandicoot. Those were some of my favorite video games growing up, and I would love to find a way to bring him back, if we could." In regards to the future of Crash Bandicoot. Now, this can be interpreted in a variety of ways, but the one I find most compelling and realistic is that Activision is planning to shoehorn Crash Bandicoot into Skylanders somehow. With each Skylanders game decreasing in sales, including Crash in a new installment would make sense and would very likely boost sales. The problem with this strategy is that it would leave Crash in a toy-trapped limbo with no escape or hope of redemption. Because, let's be honest, I doubt that Activision is ever going to develop a dedicated Crash title ever again. Why give service to fans when you can leech all the money out of something for as long as you can? Even though the co-creator of Crash really wants a full-on reboot of the series, I doubt Activision will loosen its shackles on the Crash IP anytime soon. Guitar Hero and Tony Hawk Pro Skater also suffered a similar fate, with games being milked out of them until all that was left were husks of nostalgic memories. Guitar Hero was one of those childhood games that kinda united my siblings. I remember my brother and sister really enjoying playing the original on PS2 and always showing off to me because I had no hand-eye coordination and sucked at it. Just watching them was a fun time since this was one of the only games all three of us liked. As time went on, Activision milked the series, outputting game after game, each selling a little worse and being a little worse with every installment. To be fair, Guitar Hero Live, the newest game in this franchise, did sell better than its two previous predecessors, but this game is a great example of how shitty Activision truly is. In Guitar Hero Live, you can't own songs forever unless you permanently purchase them through microtransactions. I know a lot of people tolerate microtransactions in modern games, but this reliance on them is ridiculous and scummy. With the PS2 game, the DS game, and others, there weren't shoehorned in microtransactions. It makes the game terrible and a shame that I ever bought into it to begin with. Supporting the series is a fine reason to buy the game, but simultaneously, I felt like I was supporting an awful business practice and letting Activision know what they did here was okay. The Tony Hawk series, from my knowledge, did contract this MTD, but had a different sort of problem too: rush development. You see, Activision entered into a contract with Tony Hawk to own his own video game rights until 2015, but after Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 came out in 2000 whatever, people had lost interest in the series. When Activision realized that their rights were set to expire in a rapidly approaching 2015 date, they decided to pump out a fifth Tony Hawk Pro Skater game as quickly as they could. When it became apparent that the finished game could not be released on time for the 2015 expiration date, they took drastic measures. Upon booting up the game disc, you'll be greeted with a monstrously huge update that rivals Sonic Boom: The Rise of Lyric. And that's because the game disc only contains the demo for Pro Skater 5. The update supplements the content on the disc with the actual full game. Well, that's pretty shitty on its own. What's worse is that the supposedly complete product is rampant with bugs and glitches and just reeks of unfinishedness. Better yet, numerous people went on to defend this mess. This type of garbage should not be praised for its glitchiness. It's $60 and Activision deliberately put out something that was not finished. Although I never experienced skateboarding games like all the other kids did in the early 2000s, I still played them later on and appreciated what they did for the gaming industry. Activision took this nostalgia and shat all over it with a horrid, incomplete sequel. It's these behaviors, intentionally selling defective products and adding unnecessary, disgusting microtransactions, that make me despise Activision and all they stand for. However, what encompasses is all their problems, all their repulsive business practices, and all their greed is their flagship franchise, Call of Duty. I wouldn't consider myself a big fan of Call of Duty, but I will admit that some of the early games are guilty pleasures of mine. World at War, especially on the Wii, is my favorite of the bunch as it featured a stellar campaign set in World War II, which is easily my favorite World War. The classic gameplay, which immersed you in this real past event, was enjoyable then and still is today. Also, the map design was much more interesting than what came before it, and the multiplayer was simply dumb fun. Modern Warfare and Black Ops 1 were some of my favorites for similar reasons, but as soon as Ghosts came out, I began to detest the series. I really do not like Call of Duty Ghosts, and while I respect those of you who do find some pleasure in the game, I will probably never like it. Its multiplayer was ass, the campaign wasn't great, and not to sound like a nostalgia-induced crazy person, but it just wasn't the same old good old dang old dumb fun. I don't recall myself ever wanting to play Ghosts the times I did play it. As time went on and more Call of Duties released like Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 3, I became so disinterested to the point where I didn't even want to wait for a price drop or sale. Activision went in the wrong direction with the series, in my opinion. They looked to the future when they should have looked to the past and what made Call of Duty fun originally. They injected microtransactions into the series, made the plots laughably contrived, advertised it to be a dude's game, and made a mockery of it. With the annual releases coming out like diarrhea, Call of Duty became a shell of its former self. No longer did it seem like the developers actually cared about the game and its content. Now it seemed like all they could see was the green it was producing. The new installment, Infinite Warfare, is currently sitting at the most disliked video game trailer of all time, and for good reason too. Fans wanted to return to the past like Battlefield did, but alas, Activision didn't listen or care. People just want more care and time into a beloved series like Call of Duty, and it's just not happening, which sucks. Activision is even trying to patronize their fans by remastering World at War so they get Infinite Warfare 2, which is an insult to fans of the series, frankly. Blatantly exploiting nostalgia like this is greedy and just goes to show how awful Activision truly is. Do I think their new game will sell well despite the hate it's getting? Yes and no. I do believe there will be a decline in sales, as people might be getting tired of the series, but I still think it will sell well enough to warrant a sequel after sequel after sequel until it inevitably ends up like Spyro. Fuck you, Activision. Your greed, microtransactions, disease, making a mockery of beloved franchises like Spyro and Crash, pumping out games until nobody likes them anymore, and not listening to fans that fell in love with your games to begin with, makes you the worst video game company that I've ever had the displeasure of witnessing. But as always, if you disagree or agree with me, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and take care. Have a wonderful day, and goodbye.